Tae-hyun stood in the docking bay of the Galactic Council station and felt very, very small. He had known the aliens would be big. The reports from Earth had told him that much. But knowing something and seeing it with your own eyes were two different things. The ceiling above him stretched so high he could barely see it. The doorways were built for creatures 3 times his size. Even the steps leading out of the docking bay came up to his knees. "This is going to be interesting," Ji-won said beside him. She was his colleague from Earth, a scientist who studied alien life. She looked just as overwhelmed as he felt. A massive creature walked past them, its footsteps making the floor shake. It had 6 legs and a body covered in thick purple fur. It didn't even glance at the 2 humans. To it, they probably looked like children. Or pets. Tae-hyun adjusted his uniform and picked up his bag. Earth had sent him here as their first diplomat to the Galactic Council. It was supposed to be an honor. Right now it felt like being thrown into a pool without knowing how to swim. "Come on," he said to Ji-won. "Let's find our quarters." They followed the signs through the station. Everything was written in the common galactic language, which Tae-hyun had spent 6 months learning. Reading it was one thing. Being surrounded by aliens who spoke it naturally was another. The corridors were crowded. Hundreds of different species moved through the station, all of them going about their business. Some had scales, some had fur, some had skin that changed colors. A few floated in the air without any visible means of support. One creature looked like it was made entirely of crystal, and all of them were bigger than Tae-hyun. He was 5 feet and 8 inches tall. Back on Earth, that was average for a man. Here, he was the shortest intelligent being he could see. Most of the aliens were 7 or 8 feet tall. Some were even bigger. One creature that passed them in the hall had to duck to fit through a doorway that was already 15 feet high. "They're staring at us," Ji-won whispered. She was right. Everywhere they went, aliens stopped to look at them. Some pointed. Others made sounds that might have been laughter. A few pulled out devices and took pictures like the humans were some kind of tourist attraction. Tae-hyun kept his head up and kept walking. He refused to look embarrassed. Earth had worked too hard to get a seat at this council. He wouldn't let them down by acting ashamed of being human. They finally found their quarters. The room was huge, built for species much larger than humans. The bed was big enough for 6 people. The chairs were so tall that Tae-hyun's feet didn't touch the ground when he sat in them. Even the bathroom sink was chest high. "I'm going to need a step stool to brush my teeth," Ji-won said, laughing despite herself. Tae-hyun didn't laugh. He was too busy feeling frustrated. This whole station had been built without even thinking about smaller species. It was like they didn't matter, like they weren't worth considering. "Let's get ready for the reception," he said. "We need to make a good impression." The reception was held in a massive hall that evening. It was a chance for new delegates to meet the established members of the council. Tae-hyun put on his best suit and tried not to think about how small he felt. The hall was full of aliens. They stood in groups talking and drinking. Strange music played in the background. Tables loaded with food lined the walls, but Tae-hyun couldn't identify a single dish. He wasn't even sure which ones were safe for humans to eat. An insect-like creature approached them. It had 4 arms and compound eyes that seemed to look in all directions at once. This was Ambassador Krell, according to Tae-hyun's briefing materials. "Ah, the humans," Krell said. His voice was high-pitched and buzzing. "How quaint. Tell me, do your species require special accommodations? Perhaps a stepping stool? Or should we simply carry you to the council chambers?" Several nearby aliens laughed. Tae-hyun felt his face grow hot, but he kept his voice calm. "We appreciate your concern, Ambassador. But humans are quite capable of managing on our own." "Capable?" Krell made a sound like clicking. "Your species has barely left your own planet. You have no military worth mentioning. Your bodies are fragile. You can't even survive in most standard atmospheric conditions without assistance. What exactly makes you think you belong on this council?" "Our determination," Tae-hyun said. "And our refusal to give up just because something is difficult." Krell laughed again and walked away, still buzzing with amusement. Ji-won touched Tae-hyun's arm. "Ignore him. He's not worth it," but it was hard to ignore. Everywhere Tae-hyun looked, he saw aliens who were stronger, bigger and more powerful than any human. What was Earth thinking, sending them here? How could humanity possibly compete with species that could crush them without even trying? That's when Tae-hyun saw him. The creature stood on the far side of the hall, away from the crowds. It was massive, easily 12 feet tall, with a body that looked like it was built for killing. Its skin was covered in black scales that gleamed under the lights. Its hands ended in claws that looked sharp enough to cut through steel. When it moved, every muscle rippled with controlled power. But that wasn't what caught Taehyun's attention. It was the way the creature was watching him. Those eyes were bright amber like pools of liquid gold. They were fixed on Taehyun with an intensity that made his skin prickle. The creature wasn't looking at him with amusement or contempt like the others. It was studying him, analyzing him. "That's a Drakthari," Jiwon whispered, her voice tight with fear. "They're apex predators, warriors. They've conquered 17 star systems." Taehyun, don't make eye contact. They consider it a challenge, but Taehyun couldn't look away. Something about those amber eyes held him frozen. The Drakthari tilted its head slightly like a cat watching a mouse. But there was no hunger in that gaze, only curiosity. A loud crack suddenly echoed through the hall. Everyone looked up. One of the massive support beams overhead was breaking. Metal screamed as it tore free from its moorings. The beam was falling, dropping straight toward a group of smaller delegates who stood frozen in shock. Taehyun didn't think. He just moved. He ran forward and slammed into the nearest delegate, a creature that looked like a walking plant. They both tumbled out of the way. Taehyun rolled to his feet and grabbed another delegate, pulling it clear. The beam was still falling. There was one more delegate in its path, too scared to move. Taehyun lunged forward and shoved the creature as hard as he could. It stumbled to safety, but Taehyun had run out of time. The beam hit him a glancing blow as he tried to dive away. Pain exploded through his shoulder and side. He hit the floor hard, his vision going white for a moment. When he could see again, he found himself staring up at the ceiling. Voices shouted all around him. Someone was calling for medical help. Taehyun tried to sit up, but a wave of dizziness washed over him. A shadow fell across him. Taehyun looked up into those amber eyes. The Drakthari was standing over him, staring down with an expression Taehyun couldn't read. Medical personnel arrived and tried to treat Taehyun. He pushed them away weakly. "The others," he managed to say. "Help them first. Make sure they're okay." The medics looked confused but moved to check the delegates Taehyun had saved. The Drakthari continued to watch him. Those golden eyes seemed to glow in the light. Then the creature did something unexpected. It lowered its massive head just slightly, in what might have been a nod of respect. And Taehyun, despite the pain, felt something shift in the air between them. The medical bay on the station was just as oversized as everything else. Taehyun lay on a bed that felt more like a small platform. His shoulder was wrapped in some kind of glowing bandage that the doctors said would speed up his healing. They seemed surprised that humans could heal at all. "Your species recovers quickly," one doctor said. "It looked like a floating jellyfish with far too many tentacles. Most beings your size would still be unconscious from such an impact." Taehyun didn't feel like he was recovering quickly. Everything hurt. But he nodded politely and thanked the doctor anyway. Jiwon came to visit him every day. She brought him food from Earth that she'd packed for the trip. The station's food was probably nutritious, but none of it looked or smelled like anything a human should eat. "You're famous now," Jiwon said on the third day. "Everyone is talking about the crazy human who threw himself at a falling beam to save people he'd never met." "I didn't throw myself at it," Taehyun corrected. "I was trying to get out of the way. I just ran out of time." "That's not how the story is being told." Jiwon pulled out her tablet and showed him. There were videos of the incident from multiple angles, news reports in dozens of alien languages. "Most species are calling you either very brave or very stupid. What do you think?" Taehyun asked. Jiwon smiled. "I think you did what any decent person would do." "But that's the thing, Taehyun. Most species out here don't think the way we do. They don't risk themselves for strangers." Taehyun thought about that. It seemed sad somehow. What kind of society didn't help people in danger? The doctors released him after 5 days. They said his healing was remarkable for such a fragile species. Taehyun chose to take it as a compliment. He went back to his diplomatic duties. There were meetings to attend, documents to read, and protocols to learn. The work was boring but important. Earth needed to understand how this council operated if they wanted to be part of it. But everywhere Taehyun went, he noticed something strange. The Drakthari was always nearby, not close exactly. The massive creature never approached him. But Taehyun would catch glimpses of those amber eyes watching from across a room, or he would hear the distinctive sound of clawed feet on metal and turn to see the Drakthari disappearing around a corner. "He's following you," Jiwon said nervously. "Taehyun, this isn't good." Drakthari are dangerous. They're warriors, killers. He hasn't done anything threatening, Taehyun pointed out. Yet, Ji-won said, their species has conquered 17 systems. They take what they want by force. Maybe he's deciding whether humans would be worth conquering. Taehyun didn't think that was it. There was something else in those amber eyes, something he couldn't quite identify. 2 weeks after the incident, Taehyun was in the station's cafeteria trying to find something edible when 3 large aliens approached his table. They were from a species called the Erlon. They looked like bears that had been stretched tall and given too many teeth. You are the human, the largest one said. It wasn't a question. Yes, Taehyun said carefully. Can I help you? We have heard your species wishes to join the council, the Erlon continued. This is unacceptable. Why is that? Taehyun kept his voice calm. You are weak, small. You have no strength. The council should be for powerful species only. The Erlon leaned forward, his breath hot and smelling of meat. We propose a strength assessment. If you fail, your species withdraws its petition. Taehyun felt his heart rate increase, but he didn't look away. Strength isn't just about size or physical power. Is that so? The Erlon laughed. Then show us your strength, little human. The other 2 Erlon moved to flank Taehyun. The cafeteria had gone quiet. Everyone was watching. Taehyun stood up slowly. He was barely chest-high to the Erlon. His hands weren't even close to being big enough to hurt these creatures, but he didn't back down. I don't want to fight you, he said clearly, but I won't be intimidated either. Humanity has earned the right to petition for membership. If you have a problem with that, take it up with the council through proper channels. Proper channels? The largest Erlon reached out with one massive paw, clearly intending to grab Taehyun by the front of his shirt. The paw never made contact. A clawed hand, bigger than the Erlon's, wrapped around the alien's throat and lifted him off the ground. The Erlon made a choking sound, his eyes going wide with fear. Taehyun looked up. The Drakthari had appeared out of nowhere. He held the struggling Erlon in one hand like the alien weighed nothing. Those amber eyes were cold now, filled with something that made Taehyun's instincts scream danger. This one is under my protection, the Drakthari said. His voice was deep like rocks grinding together. It filled the entire cafeteria. Touch him, and I will remove your arms before I kill you. The cafeteria was completely silent. Even the background music seemed to have stopped. The Drakthari dropped the Erlon, who fell to the floor gasping. The other 2 Erlon grabbed their companion and dragged him away quickly. No one else moved. The Drakthari looked down at Taehyun. Up close, he was even more terrifying. Those claws could slice through steel. Those teeth could bite through bone. But Taehyun refused to show fear. Thank you, Taehyun said. But I didn't need rescuing. Something changed in those amber eyes. Was that amusement? I know, the Drakthari said. You would have faced them regardless. That is why I intervened. I don't understand. Walk with me, human. We should talk. It wasn't really a request, but it wasn't quite a command either. Taehyun nodded and followed the massive warrior out of the cafeteria. Behind them, the room exploded into excited chatter. They walked to an observation deck where they could see the stars. The Drakthari stood at the window, his scales reflecting the starlight. Taehyun stood beside him, barely coming up to the creature's elbow. My name is Vexthor, the Drakthari said. I am a warrior of the 3rd pack. Taehyun, he replied. Diplomat for Earth. I have been watching you, Taehyun of Earth. I noticed. Vexthor made a sound that might have been a laugh. You do not ask why. I figured you'd tell me when you were ready. You have courage, Vexthor said. When the beam fell, you did not run away. You ran toward the danger. You put yourself between harm and those weaker than you. Anyone would have done the same. No, Vexthor said firmly. Most species would not. They would have fled. Protected themselves, but you protected others first. Even now injured, you refused medical help until others were treated. Taehyun shrugged. It seemed like the right thing to do. The right thing, Vexthor repeated. He turned to look at Taehyun directly. Do you know what my people value most? Strength? Everyone thinks that. They see our size, our claws, our history of conquest. They assume we value only power. Vexthor shook his head. We value courage, sacrifice, loyalty, the willingness to face death for those who cannot protect themselves. We call it the warrior's heart. He gestured at Taehyun with one clawed hand. You have a warrior's heart, human. I saw it when you saved those delegates. I saw it again today when you faced the Erlon without fear. Size means nothing. Physical strength means nothing. What matters is what burns inside you. Taehyun didn't know what to say. He'd expected many things from this conversation. This wasn't one of them. My people have a tradition, Vextor continued. We call our warriors brothers, regardless of blood. It is a bond earned through facing danger together, through proving one's heart in battle. Why are you telling me this? Vextor's amber eyes seemed to glow in the starlight. Because I lost my pack brothers years ago. We defended a colony world from pirates. I survived. They did not. Since then I have been alone. There was pain in those words, deep old pain. I am sorry, Taehyun said quietly. Do not be. They died with honor, but I have been searching, human. Searching for others with the warrior's heart. Others worthy of the bond, Vextor paused. I did not expect to find one in the smallest species I have ever met. Taehyun felt something shift in his chest. What are you saying? I am saying that you are not what you appear to be, Taehyun of Earth. Your species is not what it appears to be. Vextor turned back to the stars. The galaxy looks at you and sees weakness. I look at you and see something that makes even old warriors like me feel hope. Hope for what? That perhaps the strong will finally have equals. Not in power, but in spirit. Vextor's voice was soft now. This is why I protect you. Not because you need protection, but because I recognize what you are. And what am I? Vextor looked down at him, and for the first time, Taehyun saw something like respect in those amber eyes. Dangerous, Vextor said simply. You are the most dangerous thing in this station, little human, and no one else has realized it yet. 3 weeks after their conversation on the observation deck, Vextor invited Taehyun to the Drakthari embassy. It was the first time any alien had been allowed inside. Jiwon nearly had a panic attack when Taehyun told her. This is either a great honor or a trap, she said. With Drakthari, it's hard to tell the difference until it's too late. But Taehyun went anyway. Something told him he could trust Vextor. The warrior had shown him nothing but respect, even if it came wrapped in terrifying protective instincts. The Drakthari embassy was sparse and practical. No decorations, no comfortable furniture, just weapons on the walls and training equipment in the corners. It looked more like a military base than a diplomatic building. Vextor was waiting in the main hall. With him were 3 other Drakthari, each as massive and deadly looking as he was. These are warriors from my old pack, Vextor explained. They have traveled far to meet you. The 3 warriors studied Taehyun with glowing amber eyes. One of them, with silver-tipped scales, leaned down to examine him more closely. This is what you called us here to see, Vextor? This tiny creature? Show respect, Calvin, Vextor growled. This human has more warrior's heart than most of our own kind. Calvin snorted but stepped back. The other 2 warriors seemed more curious than dismissive. We have brought gifts, one said. Her voice was surprisingly gentle for such a fierce-looking creature. If you are to be pack brother, you must learn our ways. They spent the afternoon teaching Taehyun about Drakthari culture. It wasn't what he expected. Yes, they were warriors. Yes, they had conquered systems. But their society was built on honor, loyalty, and the protection of those who couldn't protect themselves. We do not fight for glory or territory, Vextor explained. We fight to protect. The weak need guardians. That is our purpose. Then why the conquests? Taehyun asked. Because sometimes protection requires force. Sometimes peace can only come after war. Vextor's amber eyes were sad. We have made mistakes, hurt those we meant to protect. But we try to do better, to be worthy of the warrior's path, Taehyun understood then. The Drakthari weren't mindless killers. They were protectors who had been forced to become conquerors. It was more complicated than the simple stories told about them. A week later, Vextor came to Taehyun with an unusual invitation. There is a tradition among my people. A ceremonial hunt in the preserves. It is meant to honor bonds between warriors. Vextor seemed almost nervous. I would like you to join me. Me? Hunt? Taehyun laughed. Vextor, I've never hunted anything in my life. And I'm not exactly built for bringing down prey. The hunt is not about the kill. It is about the journey. The time spent together. The trust built. Vextor's clawed hand rested on Taehyun's shoulder, gentle despite its size. It would honor me to share this tradition with you. How could Taehyun say no to that? The hunting preserve was a massive dome on the outer ring of the station. Inside, It had been terraformed to look like a wilderness from the Drakthari homeworld. Strange trees with black bark stretched toward an artificial sky. The ground was covered in purple grass that crunched under their feet. Vexthor moved through the preserve like he was born to it. His massive frame made no sound despite his size. He showed Tae-hyun how to read tracks in the soil, how to smell the wind for prey, how to move without disturbing the environment. "You are a good student," Vexthor said, patient, observant. "I'm trying not to trip over roots and embarrass myself," Tae-hyun admitted. They tracked a six-legged creature that Vexthor called a grazer. It was supposed to be harmless, barely worth hunting except for the tradition. The plan was simple: track it, observe it, mark it with a ceremonial tag, and return. But then the alarms started blaring. Red lights flashed throughout the preserve. An automated voice spoke in the common language. "Containment breach. Sector 7, all personnel evacuate immediately." Vexthor's expression changed instantly. The gentle teacher vanished, replaced by the warrior. "We need to move now. What's happening?" "Something has escaped from the high danger section." Vexthor grabbed Tae-hyun and started running. Something that should never be loose. They made it about 50 meters before the creature found them. It moved faster than anything that size should move. One moment the path ahead was clear. The next, something huge and terrible blocked their way. It looked like a cross between a spider and a snake, all flowing black chitin and too many legs. Its eyes were pure white, glowing in the dim light. "Void Stalker," Vexthor breathed. "Get behind me." The Void Stalker attacked without warning. It launched itself at Vexthor, barbed tails whipping through the air. Vexthor met it head-on, his claws flashing. The two titans crashed together with a sound like thunder. Tae-hyun watched in horror as they fought. Vexthor was strong, skilled, and experienced. But the Void Stalker was something else entirely. It moved like liquid death, striking from impossible angles. One of its barbed tails caught Vexthor across the chest, and the warrior roared in pain. The tail was poisonous. Tae-hyun could see the venom spreading through Vexthor's scales, turning them gray. The warrior stumbled, his movements slowing. The Void Stalker reared back for a killing blow. Tae-hyun didn't think. He just acted. He ran forward and dove between the creature and Vexthor, screaming at the top of his lungs. It was stupid, suicidal, but it worked. The Void Stalker hesitated, confused by this tiny creature that dared to challenge it. That moment of confusion was all Tae-hyun needed. His hands found the emergency beacon on his belt, the one all visitors to the preserve carried. He activated it and threw it as hard as he could. The beacon exploded in a burst of light and sound, designed to summon help and scare away predators. The Void Stalker shrieked and recoiled. It didn't like the light. Tae-hyun's eyes scanned the area frantically. There, 20 meters away, an emergency containment panel. If he could reach it, he could activate the force fields. Trap the creature, or at least slow it down, but that meant leaving Vexthor alone. The warrior was on his knees now, struggling against the venom. If the Void Stalker attacked again, he couldn't defend himself. Tae-hyun made his choice. He grabbed a fallen branch, the biggest one he could lift, and charged the Void Stalker. He screamed and waved the branch like a club. It was pathetic compared to the creature's size, but it got its attention. The Void Stalker turned toward him, those white eyes fixed on Tae-hyun with predatory focus. Tae-hyun ran. He ran faster than he'd ever run in his life. Behind him, he could hear the creature following, its many legs scrabbling on the ground. His lungs burned. His legs screamed. But he kept going. He reached the containment panel and slammed his hand against it. Nothing happened. The panel needed authorization. The Void Stalker was right behind him. He could feel its hot breath. Tae-hyun grabbed the plasma torch clipped to the panel, meant for emergency repairs. He spun around and fired it directly into the creature's face. The superheated plasma seared across its eyes. The Void Stalker shrieked and reared back, temporarily blinded, but it was still between Tae-hyun and Vexthor. And Tae-hyun could see more venom dripping from its barbed tails. The creature lunged. Tae-hyun threw himself to the side, but he wasn't fast enough. One of the tails caught him across the arm. Pain exploded through him, hot and terrible. The world went fuzzy at the edges. Through the haze, he saw Vexthor rising. The warrior was fighting through the venom, forcing his body to move through sheer willpower. He charged the Void Stalker from behind and sank his claws deep into its back. The creature thrashed, trying to throw him off, but Vexthor held on. His jaws clamped down on the thing's neck. There was a terrible cracking sound. The Void Stalker went still. Vexthor dropped to the ground beside it, breathing hard. Blood and venom dripped from his wounds. He looked at Taehyun, who was slumped against the wall. "Little fool," Vexthor said, but his voice was gentle. "Brave, stupid little fool." "Had to. Help," Taehyun managed. Speaking was hard. Everything was hard. Security teams arrived minutes later. Medical personnel rushed to treat them. Taehyun felt hands lifting him, heard voices speaking in urgent tones. But his focus was on Vexthor. The warrior was staring at him with those amber eyes, now dimmed with pain and exhaustion. Later, in the medical bay, after the doctors had cleaned and treated their wounds, Vexthor came to Taehyun's bedside. His wounds were already healing, Drekthari physiology being remarkably resilient. Taehyun's arm was wrapped in the same glowing bandages he'd worn before. "You should not have done that," Vexthor said quietly. "You could have died. So could you, I am a warrior. Death in battle is acceptable." "Not to me," Taehyun said firmly. "Not when I could do something to prevent it." Vexthor was quiet for a long moment. Then he did something Taehyun didn't expect. He knelt beside the bed, bringing his massive head down to Taehyun's level. "In my language, we have a word, Kratozar. It means one who stands when others would flee. One who shields others with their own body regardless of cost." Vexthor's voice was thick with emotion. "You are Kratozar, Taehyun. You are warrior born. We call it doing the right thing," Taehyun said. Vexthor made that rumbling sound that was his laugh. "This is why your species is dangerous, human. This is why you will inherit the stars. You do not know how to give up. You do not know how to abandon others. You do?" Word spread quickly through the station. Vexthor had named a human his pack brother. The Drekthari, who valued strength above almost all else, had accepted the smallest species in the galaxy into their ranks. Some species found it inspiring. Others found it insulting. A few found it dangerous. Ambassador Krell was among the last group. 3 weeks after the hunting incident, Earth's petition for full council membership came up for vote. Taehyun had known this day was coming. He'd spent months preparing. But he hadn't expected the opposition to be so organized. The council chamber was enormous, with seats arranged in tiers around a central speaking platform. Hundreds of species had representatives present. Taehyun stood on the platform with Jiwon beside him, feeling like an insect under a magnifying glass. Krell's voice buzzed through the chamber. "Members of the council, we are here to discuss Earth's petition for membership. However, I must raise concerns about humanity's suitability." Here it comes, Taehyun thought. "Humans are physically weak," Krell continued. "They require special atmospheric conditions. Their bodies are fragile. They have no natural defenses. They have barely explored their own star system, let alone others. What can such a species possibly contribute to this council?" Several representatives nodded in agreement. Taehyun stepped forward to respond, but Krell wasn't finished. "Furthermore, there are questions about their judgment. One of their diplomats recently engaged in reckless behavior that nearly cost him his life. He attacked a void stalker with a tree branch and a repair tool." Krell's laughter buzzed through the chamber. "This speaks to a lack of survival instincts, perhaps even a mental deficiency." Anger flared in Taehyun's chest, but he kept his voice calm. "I acted to protect a fellow being who was in danger. If the council considers that reckless, then perhaps humanity's values don't align with yours after all." "Values?" Krell clicked his mandibles. "The council values strength, capability, and wisdom, not suicidal heroics from beings who lack the physical capacity to be effective." "Then test us," Taehyun said. "If you doubt our capabilities, design a test. We'll prove ourselves worthy." He regretted the words the moment they left his mouth. Jiwon grabbed his arm, her face pale. But it was too late. Krell's compound eyes seemed to gleam. "An interesting proposal. Members of the council, I motion that humanity's petition be contingent on completing the Crucible of Worth." The chamber erupted in conversation. The Crucible of Worth was an old tradition, rarely used. It was a series of challenges designed to test a species' fitness for council membership. Most species passed easily. A few had failed and been denied entry for a century. The vote was called. Taehyun watched as the results appeared on the display. The motion passed by a narrow margin. They'd been trapped. Jiwon worked frantically over the next few days researching the Crucible. What she found made her sick. "Taehyun, this is bad," she said, spreading data across her tablet. "The challenges are designed for the average species. But the average species is 7 feet tall, weighs 300 pounds, and has bones twice as dense as ours. So we'll adapt, Taehyun said. Adapt how? Ji-won's voice rose. The first challenge is surviving in 8 times Earth's gravity for an hour. That will crush your organs. The second is consuming a substance that's poisonous to most species. The third is evading a predator in a closed arena. Taehyun looked at the data. She was right. These challenges would be difficult for the average alien. For a human, they might be impossible. Can we refuse? Yes, but then humanity's petition is automatically denied for 100 years. Ji-won's eyes were wet. Taehyun, they set this up. Krell knew you'd accept the challenge. He designed it specifically to be impossible for humans. Taehyun sat down heavily. Then what do we do? The door to their quarters burst open. Vexthor filled the doorway, his amber eyes blazing with fury. I have heard about the Crucible, he growled. It is a trap. Krell seeks to humiliate humanity and kill you in the process. I know, Taehyun said quietly. Then I will fight in your place. Pack Brother law allows it. I will complete these challenges for you. Taehyun looked up at the massive warrior. Vexthor could easily pass every challenge. He was strong enough, tough enough, deadly enough. But that wasn't the point. I can't let you do that, Taehyun said. If humanity is to earn its place on the council, we have to do it ourselves. If we rely on others to fight our battles, we'll never be taken seriously. Vexthor's claws flexed in frustration. You would rather die? I'd rather fail on my own terms than succeed on borrowed strength. For a moment, Vexthor looked like he wanted to argue. Then his shoulders slumped slightly. You are as stubborn as any Drekthari. Very well, but I will train you. All of my pack will train you. We will prepare you for these challenges as best we can. Over the next 2 weeks, Taehyun barely slept. Vexthor and his pack warriors taught him everything they could. How to breathe in extreme conditions. How to move efficiently to conserve energy. How to think like a predator and like prey simultaneously. Ji-won worked on the medical angle, researching human physiology, and ways to protect Taehyun's body from the stresses it would face. She created a cocktail of medications and supplements that might give him an edge. The other Drekthari arrived at the station, drawn by news that their pack brother Vexthor had found a new bondmate. They were curious about this human who had earned such respect. When they met Taehyun, they understood. He has the fire, one said. Small flame, but it refuses to die. The day of the Crucible arrived. The challenges would be held in a special arena that could be configured for different tests. Thousands of beings packed the viewing areas. This was entertainment for them. Drama. A chance to see if the tiny human would break. Taehyun stood in the preparation room, trying to calm his racing heart. Ji-won checked his vital signs one more time. Your heart rate is elevated, but that's normal, she said. The medications should help with the gravity and the poison. The predator challenge is pure survival instinct, I know. Vexthor entered the room. Behind him came all of his pack warriors, 12 of them in total. They formed a circle around Taehyun. Little brother, Vexthor said, his voice formal. We cannot fight for you, but we stand with you. Our strength is yours. Our courage is yours. Our honor is yours. The other Drekthari struck their chests with their fists, creating a sound like thunder. It was a warrior's salute. Taehyun felt emotion swell in his chest. Thank you. All of you. Do not die, Vexthor said, and for the first time Taehyun heard fear in the warrior's voice. Do not leave me alone again, brother. I'll do my best. The first challenge was the gravity well. Taehyun was sealed in a chamber where the gravity would be increased to 8 times Earth normal. He had to survive for 1 hour. The gravity hit him like a physical blow. Suddenly he weighed over 1,000 pounds. His knees buckled. He fell to the floor, barely able to breathe. Every breath was a struggle against the weight of his own chest. The viewers watched. Some laughed. Others shook their heads, certain he would fail. But Taehyun had trained for this. He focused on his breathing, shallow and quick like Vexthor had taught him. He didn't try to stand. He stayed flat on the floor, distributing his weight. He found a rhythm, counting seconds, fighting through the pain. 30 minutes in, his vision started to gray at the edges. Blood vessels burst in his eyes. His heart hammered dangerously. But he didn't give up. 45 minutes. He couldn't feel his hands anymore. Couldn't think straight, but he didn't give up. 60 minutes. The gravity released. Taehyun lay on the floor, unable to move, barely conscious. But he'd survived. Medical staff rushed in. They treated his injuries while the crowd murmured in surprise. The human had passed the first challenge. The second challenge came an hour later, after Tae-hyun had rested and received treatment. He was brought a container filled with a thick purple liquid. It smelled like rotting flowers. This substance is toxic to 60% of known species, the test administrator announced. You must consume it and survive for 30 minutes without medical intervention. Tae-hyun looked at the liquid. Ji-won's anti-venoms coursed through his bloodstream, hopefully enough to protect him. He took a deep breath and drank. It burned going down. Burned like nothing he'd ever felt. His stomach cramped immediately. Nausea hit him in waves. Sweat poured down his face. 10 minutes in, he started vomiting. The crowd watched as the human emptied his stomach again and again. Some looked away, disgusted. Others watched with morbid fascination. 20 minutes. Tae-hyun was on his hands and knees, shaking violently, but he was still conscious. The antivenoms were working. 30 minutes. The timer ended. Tae-hyun collapsed, but he was breathing. He'd survived. The third challenge was the Predator's Maze. Tae-hyun would be released into a confined arena with a Kalthor, a predator species known for its speed and hunting ability. He had to evade it for 1 hour. This time Tae-hyun smiled grimly. This was something humans were good at. Not speed, not strength. Endurance, thinking, surviving. The Kalthor was fast, strong, and deadly. But Tae-hyun was patient. He used the terrain, setting simple traps. He moved constantly, never letting the predator pin him down. When it got close, he used the environment as a weapon, collapsing barriers, creating obstacles. The Kalthor was built for quick kills. Tae-hyun was built. The Thurok champion stood across the arena from Tae-hyun and cracked his massive knuckles. The sound echoed like gunshots. His name was Drakmar, and he'd been undefeated in 12 matches. He was bred for this, genetically enhanced for strength, speed, and aggression. Tae-hyun was a human who'd barely survived 3 impossible challenges. His body was already broken. Blood still leaked from cuts on his arms. His ribs ached with every breath. His hands shook from exhaustion. In the viewing area, Vexthor pressed his claws against the barrier, hard enough to leave marks in the metal. His amber eyes were wide with anguish. "Stop this," he roared at the council members. "This is murder, not a test." "It is legal," Krell said calmly, "and necessary. If humanity wishes to join the council, they must prove they can survive the dangers of the galaxy. He has already proven that." "Has he?" Krell's compound eyes gleamed. "We shall see." The signal sounded. The fight began. Drakmar moved with terrifying speed for something his size. He crossed the arena in seconds and swung a fist like a hammer. Tae-hyun barely dodged. The blow cratered the ground where he'd been standing. Tae-hyun scrambled away, his mind racing. He couldn't win this through strength. Drakmar could kill him with a single solid hit. Speed wasn't an option either. The Thurok was faster than him. So what did Tae-hyun have? Stubbornness. That was it. The refusal to quit. Drakmar charged again. This time his fist connected with Tae-hyun's shoulder. Pain exploded through him as he flew backward and hit the arena wall. Something cracked. He couldn't tell if it was the wall or his bones. The crowd gasped. Surely the human was done. Tae-hyun pushed himself up. His left arm hung uselessly at his side. But he was still standing. "Stay down," Drakmar said. There was no malice in his voice. "Just a statement of fact. You have fought well. There is no shame in ending this. Can't," Tae-hyun gasped. "My species doesn't know how to quit." Drakmar's expression flickered. Was that respect? But he came forward anyway, duty-bound to finish the fight. The next 10 minutes were brutal. Drakmar wasn't cruel, but he was thorough. He knocked Tae-hyun down again and again. Each time, Tae-hyun got back up. His face was a mask of blood. His breath came in ragged gasps. His body screamed at him to stop. But he didn't stop. In the viewing area, Ji-won had tears streaming down her face. She couldn't watch, but couldn't look away. This was her friend dying in front of thousands of beings, all for humanity's chance at a council seat. The Drekthari pack warriors stood like statues, their faces carved from stone. But their claws were extended and their eyes burned with suppressed rage. Vexthor had gone silent. He stared at his little brother with an expression of pure agony. 15 knockdowns. Tae-hyun rose on shaking legs. 20 knockdowns. He could barely see through the blood. 25 knockdowns. He shouldn't have been conscious anymore. Human bodies weren't built to take this much punishment. But Taehyun stood up again. The crowd had gone quiet. Even Krell had stopped his buzzing commentary. They were watching something none of them had ever seen before. A being who simply refused to accept defeat, no matter the cost. Drakmar stood over Taehyun after the 30th knockdown. The Thurok warrior's fists were bloody. His breathing was heavy, not from exertion but from emotion. "Why?" Drakmar asked quietly. "Why do you continue? Your body is broken. You cannot win. Why won't you just quit?" Taehyun looked up at him through swollen eyes. When he spoke, his voice was barely a whisper, but somehow it carried through the silent arena. "Because my species never learned how. We're not the strongest, not the fastest, not the smartest. But we don't quit. We don't abandon each other, and we don't give up on our dreams." He coughed and blood spattered the ground. "You can beat me, kill me even, but you can't make me quit." Drakmar stared at him for a long moment. Then the Thurok warrior did something no one expected. He stepped back and lowered his fists. "I will not continue this," Drakmar announced, his voice ringing through the arena. "This is not combat. This is execution. I am a warrior, not an executioner." The crowd erupted in shocked voices. Krell jumped to his feet. "The match is not over. The human has not won." "No," Drakmar agreed. "But neither have I. This human has shown me something I have never seen. He has no chance of victory, yet he stands. He has no hope of survival, yet he fights." The Thurok turned to face the council. "I declare him the victor. Not through strength of body, but through strength of will, and that is a strength worth more than any muscle." He walked to Taehyun and offered his hand. "You have my respect, human. You have earned your place." Taehyun tried to take the hand, but his legs finally gave out. He started to fall. Vexthor was there in an instant. The Drakthari warrior had leaped from the viewing area, crossing a distance that should have been impossible. He caught Taehyun before he hit the ground and cradled him gently against his chest. "Little brother." Vexthor's voice was thick. "Foolish, brave little brother." The Drakthari pack warriors followed, surrounding them in a protective circle. They raised their fists and struck their chests in unison, the warrior's salute echoing through the arena. "Behold!" Vexthor's roar silenced the crowd. He lifted Taehyun carefully, holding him high for all to see. "Behold the little brother, smallest in body, greatest in spirit." The other Drakthari took up the cry. Then slowly, other species joined in. The Thurok delegates stood and saluted. The crystalline species chimed their approval. Even some of the skeptics found themselves moved by what they'd witnessed. A vote was called immediately. Humanity's petition for council membership. The results were overwhelming. Only a handful of species voted against. Even some of Krell's allies had changed their minds. Earth was in. Taehyun woke up 3 days later in the medical bay. His body was covered in bandages and glowing healing wraps. Every inch of him hurt, but he was alive. Ji-won was there immediately, crying and laughing at the same time. "You absolute idiot. I can't believe you survived that." "Neither can I," Taehyun admitted. His voice was hoarse. Vexthor entered the room, moving carefully to avoid hitting the ceiling. His amber eyes were wet. "You scared me, little brother. I thought I had lost you." "Takes more than that to kill a human," Taehyun said, trying to smile. It hurt. Over the next few weeks, as Taehyun recovered, the story of the Crucible spread throughout the galaxy. The human who refused to quit. The smallest species who stood against a champion and won through sheer determination. Other humans started arriving at the station. Earth's full delegation, ready to take their place on the council. They looked at Taehyun with awe and pride. He'd opened a door that had been closed to humanity, but Taehyun didn't feel like a hero. He'd just done what needed to be done, what any human would have done. Ambassador Krell was removed from his position. The council found that he'd manipulated the Crucible illegally, adding the 4th challenge without proper authorization. He left the station in disgrace. Drakmar came to visit Taehyun in the medical bay. The Thurok warrior brought a gift, a weapon from his people. "You earned this," he said. "I have never fought anyone with such spirit. It was an honor to face you." The Drakthari pack brothers became regular visitors. They taught Taehyun more about their culture and adopted him fully into their traditions. Ji-won documented everything, fascinated by this unexpected alliance between humans and the galaxy's most feared warriors. 6 months later, Taehyun stood on Earth at the United Nations headquarters. Beside him was Vexthor, who had traveled to Earth to see humanity's homeworld. The massive Drakthari looked out at the gathered humans with his glowing amber eyes. "Your planet is small," Vexthor said. "Your people are fragile. Your technology is primitive compared to most species." The human diplomats shifted uncomfortably. "And yet," Vexthor continued, his voice growing stronger, "I have searched across the stars for what I found here, brothers worthy of the name, warriors who fight not for glory but for each other." He placed his massive clawed hand on Taehyun's shoulder, gentle despite its size. "I called him little brother not despite his size, but because I saw what you all possess. Humans do not have our claws, our scales, our strength, but you have something we have hunted across the stars to find." Vexthor's voice became solemn, the unwillingness to abandon each other, the refusal to yield when protecting others, the strength to stand when standing means suffering. "These are the marks of true warriors. These are the marks of humanity." He looked out at the assembled humans. "In Drakthari culture, we say, the smallest fire, if it refuses to die, will burn down the greatest forest. Earth has sent its fire into the galaxy." Vexthor's amber eyes gleamed with something that might have been hope. "And we who called ourselves apex predators now know something. We have met our equals and we are honored to stand beside you." The hall erupted in applause, but Taehyun wasn't focused on that. He was looking at his pack brother, this massive warrior who had seen something in a small human that no one else had noticed. Vexthor had called him little brother, not as an insult, not as a dismissal, but as a recognition of what humanity truly was. They were the smallest species in the galaxy. They would probably always be among the weakest physically, but they had something that no amount of size or strength could match. They had the refusal to give up, the unwillingness to abandon their own, the courage to stand when any